Would you like to take roll call? Here?
Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Present. Can I get somebody to call for approval of February's, was it March? No, February's minutes, please.
I move to approve the minutes from the February 24th, 25 meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Would like to introduce Kenneth? Ken. If you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I moved to Gladstone maybe 2.5 years ago, and I'm retired civil engineer. My civil engineering background wasn't really traffic oriented, but you're exposed to it as a civil engineer. And I thought this would be a good way to get to know the community and help out if there's anything I can do to help.
Thanks for joining. There are a number of group activities that if you want to get signed up for that we do throughout the year, we can fill you in more if you would like. Great way to meet people. And Rob is going to talk to us this evening.
Do I have to turn it off or something? Does that work? The whole. Thank you. It's very sensitive. All right.
Got it. Time to upgrade.
I brought my own if you. Yeah.
10.
There we go. Now I can turn it on.
Yeah.
And now I hold it down. All right. Good evening. Hopefully this will work. I apologize in advance. I was in high school and Clackamas High School all day today, so my voice is at the end of its use. But by tomorrow, I probably won't even be able to talk. So. My name is Rob Sadowski. I am the Clackamas County's Transportation Safety Outreach Coordinator. I explain it to my mother-in-law by saying I try to get people not to do stupid things while they drive their car. I am not an engineer. I don't pretend to be an engineer. I do work that's mostly around behavioral change, trying to get people to think about what they're doing when they're operating a variety of types of vehicles, including driving, walking, bicycling. And that work takes me into a variety of areas. I'm going to give you kind of a snapshot of the work that not only I do, but some of the planning and policy work that Clackamas County has recently embarked on, so that you can have an opportunity to early on see where we are, and also we can potentially talk about ways that we are able to collaborate. So I will go on. Try this again. Okay. I don't know. Well, it's not working for me, but I can have you click through it.
Okay.
You want to take over and I'll just tell you when to click through? Okay. All right. Well, you can go to the next slide. Perfect. This slide is just representational of the fact that it takes a community to do traffic safety, that there are so many different elements that can impact an individual's decision, their life, our ability to respond upon when there is a crash to save a life, and pulls together how important it is to collaborate. Go to the next. This may be a series of things being added. So click through. No, I don't know. Is it showing on your screen? All right, well, there we go. So just some examples. State Farm Insurance, which invests in peer-to-peer marketing and does a variety of work. The ODEC, which does driver's education classes and offers both in school and private programs. The OLCC, the Liquor and Cannabis Commission, which does minor decoy operations with our sheriff and local police. Bars and restaurants, which are responsible for training servers to know when to cut off so that we don't have people driving from establishments with alcohol coursing through their veins and impacting their decisions. Northwest Family Services, which does a teen alcohol and drug prevention program that also collaborates with us in school presentations and trying to encourage kids to have healthy lifestyles and not use alcohol, drugs, vaping, cigarettes, and opioids. In this case, we just showed Lake Oswego. I don't know because it's on the other side of the river, maybe, but they have grants from the Oregon Department of Transportation to do school zone speed enforcement, and we can help with that. EMS, you may know this, that the time it takes to get to a crash is one of the most important factors in determining whether someone's going to survive or not. How fast we can get there and how fast we can respond, how fast we can get blood. And the only Trauma 1 centers in our area are in the city of Portland. There's no Trauma 1 centers in Clackamas County. And if we are in Estacada, it's even harder. Large fleet operators, which are operating large vehicles like Fred Meyer that are operating trucks throughout the day. What are their safe driving policies? And that should be it. Okay. So we are, just to give you kind of a scope of where we are, this is showing our crashes as well as our fatal and serious crashes for the county under a 2% growth over the last, this period is 2018 to 2022. One of the reasons for that is that ODOT's data lags current data. So we actually just got 2023 data, so we'll be able to add that year in a little bit. But as you can see, roughly total crashes have been going down, despite the fact that we have a population growth, and despite the fact that 2020 and 2021 were some of the worst years for crashes in not only in our region but in the country. We've been doing a pretty good job. Fatal crashes are a little more. It's hard to say they represent the same as the crashes going down because they're kind of a little bit hit and miss, kind of a little bit of a pun in that things can determine whether it was a pedestrian, how fast they were going, a variety of things that happen. But as you can see, we have seen a big jump, particularly in serious crashes in 2021 and 2022. A lot of that had to do with COVID. As people stopped going into work, there were less people driving. And one of the natural things that happens when there are less cars on the road is people drive faster. It seems more wide open. And when wide open spaces happen, people drove faster. The second thing that happened was there was a perception, some of it early on was real, later on was less real, that police officers and sheriffs and state police were not pulling anybody over. And once that got out, people had less fear of the consequences on the enforcement side. Okay, let's go to the next one. We are, as part of our work, and I think the United States has been moving through this, is developing a safe system approach to traffic safety. We know that a variety of things can happen, that responsibility is shared, and that by being proactive in our safety, we can really make a difference. So we approach these 5 categories of solutions. The first, the engineer's job is the safe roads, designing the roads in the first place so that we can slow people down, that when there is a crash, it can absorb as much as the kinetic energy as possible through guardrails and other things. The safe speed section is not just on the enforcement side, but a little bit on cars, a little bit on things like speed bumps. There are a variety of ways to reduce speeds that don't just include enforcement. Safe vehicles, the design of vehicles has actually been very instrumental in lowering fatality rates in the United States since the year 1990 with safer cars and particularly added side impact airbags are going to make a really big difference. And so these kind of things that are happening there. Safe road users is where my work mostly happens in trying to convince people not to do their stupid things. And then post-crash care is getting to the people quickly and getting them to safety as much as possible. And just for example, we've had a really strange conversation today about blood today, about what type of blood should paramedics and fire departments bring to a scene so that they have the widest and best possibility of surviving. And there's some really interesting experiments going on in terms of created blood systems that can actually save people's lives. So my life can get really weird sometimes, but sharing that. We also believe that one, death is not acceptable. So we have a goal of reaching 0 fatalities because we just can't set a goal higher than that. We also know that humans make mistakes. Humans are vulnerable. They can only withstand a certain amount of kinetic energy before our bones break apart. But we don't want people to die from those mistakes, whether they're speeding, whether they're crossing a street at the wrong place, we still want them to survive. So our work in safe systems is to try to take all these 5 things and build a plan out of it. And we just got a grant from the federal government for something called the Safe Streets for All grant. And we've launched an effort to try to pull together a collaborative approach to our safe systems work. We have a external advisory committee that we've invited a number of people. Andrew sits on the committee representing Gladstone. That is going to go through a process to develop a plan that includes strategies under these 5 areas. Okay, let's go to the next one. The Swiss cheese model of redundancy creates layers of protection. So think of it as if you've got someone who makes a mistake, it could be a safe road user, it could be their vehicle brakes that fail, it could be their speeding, it could be friction being worn out on roads, et cetera. If everything fails at once, there's like much high likelihood of a death or a serious injury. But the Swiss cheese model says, let's try to create redundancy and make sure that, well, if someone makes a mistake, maybe their vehicle will save them, maybe our speeds will save them, et cetera. So it takes a lot of different elements. And this is a really new way of approaching transportation engineering. It used to be, we said, you design a road, a number of people will die, and that's acceptable. And by saying, no, that's not acceptable, it really allows us to take a look at something different. Next. So what will we be doing? We're updating and expanding our county's transportation safety plan, or sometimes called a TSAP. We were the first county in the country to develop a transportation safety action plan. We were the first country to set a 0 goal for fatalities. It creates specific actions that can be used to infuse the safe system approach. Including ensuring that people's civil rights are protected, that people are currently not at the table have a voice at the table, and that we're making sure that our transportation system doesn't have a negative impact on any one population. And including as many people as we can in directing the county's transportation land use and development processes. And one of the unique things about what we're doing is not just looking at it from a traffic safety perspective, but what of our other transportation policy and land use policies that come into play? Do we need to change our zoning codes in order to look at driveways, for example, or where we allocate schools is a very important component of safety. And often our traffic safety team is only involved well after the school is built and the streets are built. So how can we be involved early on to be thinking about some of these issues? Next. No problem. Some of the key activities will be creating a set of data analysis tools. Maps, basically, that will look at injury data, serious crash data, all crash data, what's causing it, why, how does it cross amongst demographic information. For example, we were having a conversation today when we were looking at demographic information. If we looked at it from what we might say seniors, 62, 65 and above, we weren't seeing the same kind of impact when we pulled out 75 and above. So really starting to break it down and seeing, are there any trends that we can find? All these tools will be available for Gladstone to use, as well as any of our other counties to use, by the way. And so that in making your own traffic decisions, if you want to overlay maps, we'll have some public maps that will be available. Understanding how lack of access impacts particularly rural and suburban communities that might be different, and how do those decisions, and decisions, how transportation decisions occur here may be very different than even across the river, say in West Lynn or Lake. We'll have specific tools and guidance that we'll provide for our own planning projects, as well as providing those tools for other communities, and mapping resource tools as part of that. Next. We're also developing post-crash evaluation and trauma support framework, which we're calling triage, which doesn't spell anything. It's just triage. But a guidebook for us to essentially think of it as every time there's a serious or fatal crash, we want to understand what happened and why. Think of it as like when a plane goes down, the NTSB, the National Traffic Safety Board, comes in and reviews and says, what happened? And how can we prevent this from ever occurring? How much was driver error? How much was the plane itself? How much was mechanic error? All that stuff. If we can go in and better understand crashes and what happened, we might be able to go back and look upstream for decisions and for opportunities to touch someone's life that might have been able to prevent that. For example, in looking at crash data, we've seen a lot of increase in mental health issues arriving in some of the drivers that are in crashes. Were there opportunities to intervene and where? And what are those opportunities? Does that mean we want to do some training of mental health care providers and doctors to raise concerns so that we can address some of the mental health needs so that we don't get into a state where people who have serious mental health illnesses are driving cars and potentially creating challenges both for themselves and for others. Next. Our planning processes that we're going to be going through as part of this triage is looking at our existing practices. Everything from before the crash, getting people out to the crash, resolving the crash and learning from those. How often should we be meeting? We are in the process of interviewing other cities and municipalities and counties about their trauma support. It may include providing training to our police officers and sheriffs on trauma-informed care. And it may include resolving how we do emergency responses. And really hopefully learning from some of these experiences so that we can, on a regular basis, really start developing almost like the methodology and schooling to move forward and learn from crashes. Next. Some of the things that we'll be doing as part of a traffic safety action plan, we'll be evaluating crash trends and factors. Particularly interested to see how they've changed over the last 10 years. 28% of our crashes are related to alcohol. Over 20% are related to speeding. Curious to see how those will change over time. When we did our analysis in 2019, which was the last time our TSAP was approved, there was no discernible difference for seniors in driving, and we're looking at some actual differences arising this year, and that can impact what I do in terms of maybe doing additional work in senior centers and educating older drivers on those consequences and issues around that. So those are the kind of things we'll be doing in terms of evaluating those trends. We'll also be developing a list of projects that will be prioritized for our funding packages, whether it's through our general road fund or through our vehicle registration fee, so that we have a list of projects moving forward. That could include hotspot. Hotspot is when you're doing a very specific location, like an intersection, or segments, and systemic analysis is when you're looking at an entire sort of section of roads. So we've been doing some work around curve warning signs throughout our county. And so that would be a systemic analysis where we were overlaying crashes, where are curve warning signs, and we did an analysis of all the friction on our roads, which is really interesting, and to see whether are people getting into more crashes where we have less friction on the roads, and if so, what are the things that we can do to change that. Next slide. So we'll be establishing a vision and goals, developing strategies and actions to be included in the TSAP, identifying those high-level infrastructure projects based on hotspot locations, and then creating a process to prioritize those projects for the future. And hopefully we'll also be creating a roadmap so that if Gladstone wants to create their own traffic safety action plan, you'll have the steps already in place that you can do that as well. Next. Now I want to talk about our other work in the region, sort of beyond that planning. This is a little bit of my day-to-day work. Next. No, that's okay. So I'm going to show you a video that we produced. Hopefully that'll go. Targeting young drivers between the ages of 16 and 24, particularly in our suburban areas, on distracted driving. You should be able to just click on the, yep. Um, You may or may not have seen that because we were focused on teenagers and getting it to where they watch things, not necessarily where you watch things. YouTubes that they are watching, or Twitch or Snapchat, were big deliverers of those. Over 1.5 million views amongst teenagers in our county saw that. We are in the process right now of developing a campaign which we're roughly calling Expect the Unexpected, although that probably won't be the name of the campaign, but really focused on some of the worst distracted driving, and we're focusing on teenage boys in the county. We are now opening up we got funding from the State Department of Transportation to do that, but we're interested in partners that may want to co-brand at the end. So as you see, we've got this Drive to Zero Clackamas County branding at the end. We could potentially, we're opening up that to multiple brands. So if Gladstone wanted to be a part of that, at no cost to you, we can make that happen. If you're interested. And we're also looking at a campaign focused on particularly making decisions on getting home before people start driving with alcohol or cannabis in their system. Next. So I said I was in a high school. I was in Clackamas High School this week. Last week I was in Milwaukee High School. The week before that, I was in Rex Putman High School. My goal is to get into every Health 2 class every year, if possible. And I also do work in Health 1. This is actually an example of Health 1. Can you go back? That's all right. Health 1 is a lighter touch. Health 2 is a more deeper dive. As you may know, Oregon does not have required driver's education, so this is a way that I can reach every person who may potentially be a driver. I am not in Gladstone High School. I'd love to be in Gladstone High School. Part of Health 1 is they produce a poster that we around alcohol, driving, vaping, and opioids. You can go to the next slide. This is the guy in the middle is Kevin Brooks. Kevin Brooks is a speaker who talks about his life. He is paralyzed from the waist down after crashing his car in his late teens, early 20s. I think it was I think it was at his 20th birthday, actually. He killed his best friend in that crash, and he has recovered from that in a really strong way. He comes and talks to high school at assemblies and talks about not just the risk of drinking and driving, but also recovering and dealing with mental health issues, surviving that, and just really becoming a human again. He's really great. We have our mental health team that can then work with the students who may be impacted because even though he's talking very specific about his own story, there's a lot of trauma that gets kicked up by some of these students hearing these stories. His name is Kevin Brooks. He has his own website if you want to see it. It's Kevin Brooks something. Just Google Kevin Brooks motivational speaker. He's great. He'll be here. He'll be in the county May 23rd. He lives in British Columbia. He can easily come down. So we try to get him into a school every 4 years because it's the same presentation every year. But we have funding so that there's no cost to the school at all for this. Next. I'm also at fairs and festivals. One on the left is we have something called Safety Street. That's at the county fair. Although I have not been at the county fair last year or this year because they're building a new cow barn and the cows have displaced us, which is very sad. So what we've been doing the last year and this year is trying to get more out into communities. So I'm available along with our team, our safety assistants, to come provide these little pedal cars into an obstacle course. We focus on 9 years and under kids to teach them basic of traffic safety. Really, it's a lot about pedestrian safety, even though they're driving these little cars, as well as reminding parents what the rules of things like crosswalks and school zones are. So I'm available to come out to any event or festival or activity in Gladstone. Would love to do that. I have staff that can come out, and that could be weekends, evenings, as well as during the weekday. Helmet fittings can be a part of what we do. Next. The bottom left is a picture from a senior program. AAA does classes on senior driving, and we help amplify that voice. And then on the top right is car seat fittings can occur at every Clackamas fire station, but we also have the ability to run and partner with some agencies to do car seat fittings at locations or at firehouse. Next. And that's mostly what I wanted to talk to you about. I would just have the information that you can contact me. That's my phone number as well as my email. You can also just search Drive to Zero and you'll find the work that we do. There are many different ways that we can come out and help, and we'd love to have that conversation. We also have our own traffic safety committee that meets every other month. Andrew serves on that, and it's always an opportunity to engage. We haven't done it in a couple of years, but we occasionally have a networking session for all the TSCs in the county. Just a way for you to meet other TSCs and say, well, what are you guys working on? And it's really interesting. Canby does a really great job. So we love to put Canby out in front and have people to learn what they're working on. So I'm open for questions. Yeah.
With the cars being touted as safer and safer and safer, is there any relationship to the increase in crashes because people perceive that they're safer?
I don't know the answer to that question. We may be able to find some of those answers as part of our TSAP update. My perception is that so cars are designed to withstand a crash at 55 miles an hour for hitting a fixed object. If you speed, and we've seen a big increase in speeding in the last 3 years, your rate of survival might be less for that. The other thing that we've seen, particularly in the area of pedestrians, is some cars are getting really big. And those big cars, when they hit a person, their bones won't withstand it. So that's an issue. We know that pedestrian fatalities have been going up. And then the third thing that I would share is that the center of gravity of vehicles have changed with electric vehicles. And we have found that e-vehicles are going through our guardrails at a rate that we did not expect. So Texas Tech University right now has a study going on trying to figure out the best way to retrofit a guardrail to help save that from happening. And then our fire departments have shared that the jaws of life are not cutting through some of the big, larger vehicles in the same way as well as the e-vehicles. So they're looking to upgrade their equipment so that their paramedics and their first responders can have access to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know you said that the goal is 0 fatalities. When we had the graph that showed the crashes and then fatalities, crashes were going down, fatalities had come up quite a bit, and you said that can be misleading.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, what is the measure of success in terms of, are we looking at a reduction in crashes or reduction in, I mean, I know you want fatalities to be 0, but year over year, is there a benchmark goal for reductions in one or the other?
Well, we're going to be talking about that. We did not set year-to-year goals last time, or like a 5-year goal. That's an interesting option. I would say there are a number of things that we can do to test our success. One is, do people perceive traffic safety as being important? What is our culture of traffic safety, and how important is that with us as citizens and people who live here? The second thing, it would be, are crashes in general going down, or types of crashes? So for example, our crashes went down, and a lot of those crashes that were going down were curves, roadway departures. Oregon has a 54% of our fatal crashes were roadway departures. The nation's standard is 20%. We also have a lot more curves than, say, Nebraska, and more trees and more mountains. But we really didn't necessarily analyze it now we have friction data that can be really helpful for us. So if we know so we can set certain goals and say we want to reduce curve departure goals in the next 5 years by doing this. I'd say in some ways the 30 to 35 regular fatalities that we have, some of them are the hardest to prevent. There are a number of fatalities that originally get designated as a fatality due to traffic that is a suicide. People who are walk in front of a car on 84, for example. I mean, that wouldn't impact Clackamas County, but we've had some regional numbers that are concerning to us. And what does that look like? We've actually had some interesting conversations about should our health, housing, and human services be working with us on a project that we might have specific funding of doing outreach on freeways, for example, to try to reduce that. The other thing I would say is that a grand majority, more than half of our crashes are occurring on Oregon Department of Transportation roads. So while our goal is to get to 0, it's very difficult for us to do any infrastructure change on any road that we don't own. And some of those roads are city roads. There were a couple of pedestrian fatalities in Oregon City that are not our roads, for example. But from the behavioral side, I look at everything. Um, and, um, but it can be a little complicated. If a death occurs on I-5, it's not our medical examiner, it might be the state's medical examiner. And just it gets a little complicated. So while we try to do everything for the county, it's not always that possible.
Do you think at the end of this project, you'll be able to look and see which things that were implemented had the greatest impact to be able to focus money maybe the next time around on those things? Or is it going to just be well, we tried all these things and it worked, so let's do another big try a bunch of things again? Makes sense.
I think it's going to be a little bit of both. For things like systemic changes, like our curve warning signs, we'll be able to see whether when we put a new curve warning system and change it on XYZ street, our crash is going down. For a campaign like the marketing campaign, it's going to be really hard for me to prove anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you how many people watched it, but I'm not necessarily sure how that impacts. I know that typically the schools that I present in are not having the same kind of serious fatals from the schools that I don't present in, but it's not proof of anything, right? It's just something that happens or not happens. So part of it is I want to do something because we hear people complain about it, and I think it's important for us to try. So yeah, throwing everything at the wall is okay. If we have a specific intersection that we're having an issue and what we tried didn't work, we'll go back in and see if we can try something else. And learn from that and say, hey, we did this, it didn't work. Yeah, I mean, we're not going to do what Mount Carmel, Indiana did, which was, do you remember?
I don't. Yeah.
Mount Carmel converted all their traffic signals to roundabouts. Yeah. And they're essentially at zero. Like they have no intersection fatalities. We know that if we had a roundabout at every single intersection, we probably have no traffic fatalities. Maybe some pedestrians because roundabouts can be confusing and complicated for pedestrians. But we don't have that kind of money. Roundabouts are very, very expensive because you have to purchase the property around and the tolerance for a community to have that many roundabouts is not like Bend. How about I put it that way? And so we have to take those political issues into consideration. We also don't have all the money in the world to fix every problem. So that's why our committees, our processes, our list of priorities are important.
One of the things you had talked about was starting to gather more data and better data and sharing that publicly available. I know you mentioned that there's some online mapping tools. Is there crash data on there now with like location and, information on specific crashes or?
So ODOT has data available right now. So you can go and find your data if it's much better than it was 5 years ago. I don't have a lot. I'm not a fine-tooth mapping person, and I can generally try to figure it out. But our hope is that we can provide tools that are one of the hardest things is first finding where you are. So you have to kind of settle into that location. Once you get that, you can get it. But hopefully having maps that are already been somewhat analyzed, but also cross-reference things. So like we might be able to tell you, here's the challenges in the last 5 years that we see for Gladstone, and here's what percentages are students. Here's what percentages are potentially students from this population versus other populations. So we'll see what kind of detail we can get with that. But if you have specific needs, let us know. We'd be interested in letting our team know about that.
Yeah, the ODOT data is very lacking on local roads. It's very good on their system, but once you get into county and even locals, it's typically has very little like information data associated with it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we're going to be exploring is, are we asking the right questions from our office are asking the right questions, so are we collecting the right data that we need? For example, officers are supposed to, and for the most part do, for any DUI, ask where the last place they drank was. And that information can be very helpful. There were a number of locations, not in Gladstone, but in Milwaukee, that were, I'd say, repeat offenders, like had 4 or 5. So I went, and having that information was helpful because I went to at the time, mayor of Milwaukee and said, hey, can you come to this bar with me? And he threatened and said, we'll have police parked in your parking lot until you figure this out.
Yeah.
Very personal ask. very different ask. And also we can work with OLCC to come in, we can retrain. It's actually really, really easy to not serve minors now because if I don't know if you have kids this age, but the licenses are now portrait or landscape based on their age. So if you have a license that is portrait, you are not old enough to drink. So OLCC used to sell machines. You could put them in and tell you right away, but now you don't have to. You just look at it. Are they horizontal or vertical? What does that look like? But you will probably not be surprised about how many people will serve minors regardless of their age. They don't even card, or they do card, take the card, look at it, return it, and serve them. And so our operations that we do with the LCC can be really helpful. Although the bars have a phone tree, so as soon as we're out there, they start making phone calls and. Yep. Probably.
May I ask? Yes, okay, if I have a question. Yeah, two things. One, if you could elaborate a little bit on how the skid test went in
Yeah.
Clackamas and maybe some of the worst or the most slippery roads. And also we've got and talking about the safe streets, we have our community festival the first weekend of August. Would that be something that there perhaps could be some connection there, just as a throw out idea?
So the second question is, I just have to look at my calendar and see whether we have the trailer available, but that would be great. We'd love to do that. On the first question, there's a company out in New Jersey that has this ginormous orange truck that they drive, and they have a wheel inside the truck that's turned at 45 degrees, and they shoot water down on the street, and as they go, they measure that one wheel's resistance. And they drove all 1,400 miles of our road system. Our road system, so not ODOT's. We learned a couple things. We learned that our friction is actually rather good. We expected some bigger problems. We have lined up a couple streets right now that look like there's some significant problems. And they're older roads, so we can then upgrade up it on our list of paving because of that. We know by road style. So if you have chip seal versus, I don't know what the other one's called, regular road, maybe. Yeah. Versus asphalt. Chip seal is much more frictioned, much more rough, better friction for you. Although bicyclists hate them because it's rougher. And that over time it smooths out. Very beginning, you get a little oil release, so it can get a little slippery the first few weeks, and then it gets really good. It's rough, and then over time it'll have higher friction. It's the opposite for asphalt. So asphalt starts out really smooth, and then as it wears down, it breaks things up and it starts getting more gritty. And grittier roads are better for slipping and sliding. We know that one of the challenges that we have with slippy roads are white men between the ages of 45 to 65 going motorcycling for the first time for 20 years, 30 years. And they think they can operate the same vehicle that they had when they were a kid, or a 19-year-old or 20-year-old, and it's much bigger than they think, and they're much less agile. And then or they buy a new motorcycle and they're using the certification to ride a motorcycle what they had 20 years ago, and that motorcycle is very different. Has a lot of great more safety equipment, but they're operating it in a way that might not be consistent. So getting people to it's a really interesting demographic that we're trying to figure out how do we adjust. Also, while we can convince some people to take an Uber and lift home after drinking in a bar, it's very difficult to do that with a motorcyclist. They do not want to leave their motorcycle in a parking lot. Just really interesting stories kind of with that. But from a friction perspective, we don't have it fully mapped. It will be part of the TSAP, so we'll have that information. My supervisor, Joe Merrick, who's been the county engineer for more than 30 years, is retiring, but he's staying on for 2 years, and one of those projects is going to be mapping that along with our curves and curve warning systems. Where, as part of our TSAP, we are getting the free use of a software for essentially an 18-month period of time called, I think it's called Curve Smart, essentially, in order to determine what a curve warning speed limit is coming into an intersection, you use what's called ball banking. So you know what a level is. It's got a little ball in it and it kind of rolls. So ball banking essentially is you drive through the intersection, and as the ball leaves a certain area and goes above a line, you say, oh, okay, that's too fast. So that's 25 miles an hour. We're going to set the curve at that level. This actually uses a different technology. It uses air-based mapping systems that they've had access to, and by that and combined with altitude and curves and information that they have, think that they can replace the use of having a staff person going out and driving a road 6 or 7 times to do the ball banking, which would both save us money or save any municipality money to do that. And we're hoping to have that done on our entire system. And whether includes any of your roads or not, it's probably going to be less important for a city than in a rural area. But one of the things that I share with kids when I go to high schools is that when we put a 25-mile-an-hour curve warning, there's a reason. It's not just randomly selected. It's when your wheels will leave the road. It's when you can enter a curve and not leave that curve, and what that'll look like. One of the things that this software does is it analyzes based on some formula that they worked with a psychologist on, is if you're driving along an area that has a lot of curves, you now expect a certain type of curve. And if all of a sudden you come with a sharper curve, that's where the crash is. And so they can actually do that analysis based on your system, which the psychology element doesn't come into ball banking. So there is one area that we've already run that has some real particular interested alignment with where they say there will be problems and where we have crashes. So then that leaves the next question. Is it a curve sign that we need, or do we need to rethink how we run that curve, and how costly would that be? Because softening curves or straightening curves are incredibly expensive. I mean, essentially, we design most of our rural roads in Clackamas County for farm vehicles. You know, these were not. Stafford Road was a rural road, and now it connects 2 major suburban communities and is a bypass for I-5 and I-205. And it's not designed to hold all those cars that we have. And it's going to be a really interesting challenge over time. We tried to get some funding to do some really interesting work on Stafford, but we didn't get that funding support. Now I feel like I'm ranting, sorry.
Vehicle crashes, are motorcycles just thrown into the vehicle crash pile, or are they separated out? And how are they as a percentage?
A motor vehicle as a percentage, both in the state of Oregon and Clackamas County, are well overrepresented. Something like 20% of our fatalities are motor vehicle represented, and it's not 20% of its usage. It's closer to like 11%. And in the state, it's closer to 40% of fatalities. It's really alarming. So it raises some interesting questions. You know, can we work with dealers? Can we work with at point of purchase? Is it something that we can't change? It's rare. It is rarely because someone is hitting a motorcyclist.
Really?
If it is hitting a motorcycle, it is a side-on collision where someone is coming out of an intersection or a driveway and hitting the motorcyclist who is operating their vehicle appropriately. It is not sideswiping on the freeway. It is not. So the signs that and the ads that NHTSA has see the motorcyclist. That's annoying to motorcyclists, but that's not what's causing most of the fatalities. It's user behavior.
Continuing with motorcycles, did Oregon, that I just hear, pass where they can drive between cars when it's slow?
That has not passed.
And
No, you cannot split lanes, which is what it's called, or weave
Okay.
between lanes. It's not legal in the state of Oregon.
Okay.
It has been a bill. I think it was vetoed by our governor. And it will probably be a bill every year and forever. The motorcycle lobby is quite interested in passing this law. I'm not sure how much an impact it's going to have. I don't think it's great. I don't think we should say to people that it's okay to do it. That's from a behavioral side point. How do I then say you can do that, but you can't do this behavior? Like I want a culture of safety, and I don't think that creates a culture of safety. I don't write legislation. I don't typically testify on legislation for the county, but I'm not sure how much of an impact it really will make.
I just have a comment on driving courses for seniors. And I'm a senior now, and I looked into it and have been deterred by the cost, the ones that I've seen. And that's just my comment. I'd be more likely to attend a course like that if the cost was less.
So I don't provide classes myself. I work with AAA that primarily does that. A lot of what they do is they do it at senior centers, so it's free, but if you need to go to a senior center. There are other things that we're thinking about. So I just went to a conference a few months ago, and one of the things that I saw were data around seniors and driving, and I'm in that age. When you're over 55, we shouldn't be in cars. That's what the data was showing. That our mental, so teens, fully adult brains are not developed until 25 or 26. The prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until 25, 26. And we know that teens are making a lot of bad decisions because they're still teens. There's hormones racing through them. There's rage going through them, depression, all those things that are happening with teens. And then their brain is not fully developed as part of that. When you get to around 50, 55, your brain starts to remap again as we start to get older. And that creates challenges in the prefrontal cortex as well. Most evidence shows that seniors outdrive their capability. I think it's 7 years women, 10 years men. So not to scare you, but it's something that we need to deal with. And one of the things that's interesting as part of the studies is they asked seniors whether they were using the new equipment that are in their cars. They're buying new cars. They're not driving necessarily old cars with no safety features. But they had disabled their lane detection software. They had disabled their automatic braking systems because they were too complicated. They didn't know how to use them. And the reality is seniors need it more than any age group. Their reaction time is what really needs that more than any other age. So one of the things that we're talking about is, can we convince our dealers to turn them on so that it's default on, not default off? Can we provide training for folks that may not be as computer savvy on utilizing these safety features and understanding how important those are? And can we train children of seniors on how to make that decision with their parents on when it's time to take the keys away? Those are all very complicated, but yeah. But again, last time we did not see any, like it was not like 17% of our population were seniors and 17% of our serious and fatal crashes were seniors. That's a good sign that there's not a inverse impact, but we think that's going to change in this next round, and we're only getting older. I know, I'm sorry. It's not, yeah. The good news is that cars are much safer.
Yeah, I see a lot of crashes where somebody put their foot on the brake and the gas pedal at the same time. And for the automobile engineers, I'd like to see an interface where if you got your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time, you can't go through the storefront.
It's a great idea. It's a really great idea. Unfortunately, it's a federal policy, so I can't make a local policy that will impact that. Some states like California could have the buying power to potentially do something like that. Oregon doesn't have that kind of buying power. Nor do I make Oregon law. And I'd love to see mandatory driver's education. One of the reasons why driving education is no longer mandatory in the state of Oregon was a research study in the 1980s that came out, a very bad research study that didn't have a lot of people in the research, so that it didn't have a high number, which is important in terms of accurate data. And they looked at whether seniors who had driving instruction were safer, and all they did was look at crashes. They didn't look at the severity of the crashes. So there was no impact, no difference between someone who took driver's ed and someone who didn't on the number of crashes people got in. But if you looked at serious and fatals, the numbers are extraordinarily different. People see, and Oregon has done some studies that Oregon students that take driver's education are twice as, people who don't take driver's education are twice as likely to get into a serious or fatal crash. But it's really hard, once you've removed it, it's really hard. In a state like this that has a balanced budget, it would be seen as an unfunded mandate. It'd be very, very difficult. We require a 2/3 vote in our legislation to get that done, and I don't know if it's even possible. Yeah.
Anything else? Thank you for taking the time to.
You're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can get a hard copy of it. Something.
I'm surprised about the motorcycles part. I don't have any business. I think you do.
I do? Do I?
You do.
What do I have?
I thought you had your cyclist, whatever.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you.
we, as part of, where's the agenda?
My agenda's right here.
Tim?
Yeah.
Can we go back to the approval of the minutes?
We
We
need
had
to-
a motion
Yeah.
and a second, but we didn't,
We didn't vote, yeah.
yeah. So I will call rolls if you accept the minutes as they are. Let's see, Tim Large,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
John Kilstrom,
Yes.
Mindy's not here, Andrew,
Yes.
Benjamin,
Yes.
Kenneth,
Yes.
thank you.
Just trying to figure out a way to segue back to that. You guys, anybody have anything before we ask her?
I think the chief's gonna cover the e-bike thing and then we'll just, anything at the end.
I had one thing I wanted to bring up, just kind of a roundtable discussion item.
Shoot.
And this is actually something my wife brought up with me. So I've got a boy that goes to Cracksburger. So my wife's constantly picking him up, and she's noticed the last couple months on Webster Road that the school flashing light sign aren't synced. You've got the school flashing lights from both directions, north and south on Webster Road. And so we drive from south to north to get to Cracksburger, and regularly that flashing light is not on. And as she goes to turn into Cracksburger, the opposite one is on. And I don't know if it's a timing issue or something, but she has noticed it regularly over the past couple months. And to me, if that's true, it's an issue that needs to be fixed, because one light is not saying that you need to drive 20 miles an hour because it's school zone, while the opposite side coming from the north is. So
Have you reached out to Public Works?
I haven't yet. So, but
I have a department head meeting tomorrow morning, so.
please bring it up.
Yeah, that's, I have a kid that goes to Cracksburger too, and I forgot to bring it up here. My wife actually mentioned it to me too, that she noticed. I can't remember if she saw one was off, or I think she had said one was on.
Yep.
And when there was no school in.
Yeah, they're completely out of sync. They're either
Yep.
on at the wrong time, or one of them is on and the other one's not on during pickup.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. We've noticed it too.
That's it.
Anything else?
Roundtable?
Roundtable, anything?
Chief's gonna.
I was gonna say, Chief, you've got,
I got a quick question.
oh,
got-
shoot.
We had a bunch of volunteer opportunities that we're supposed to sign up for. Are we good on those? Are we filled up? Do we know what the status of those are? Do we need more support for those?
I can have Yvonne reach out to everyone.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, she'll be back next week.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Before we go into traffic, one thing before you talk about traffic stuff, I noticed on one of the accident things, it was a hit and run with a parked vehicle, but it says there were two drivers involved and gave their ages. If it was a hit and run, should it be with
If
people?
it's a hit and run, then yes, that could be the case, because we probably got him into custody. And
Caught up with them?
You want to give us your updates?
I can move forward and give the updates, absolutely. As you're aware, Tim and I have been looking at the e-bike ordinances. You saw that on my, I decided to put that on my message in the monthly report, doing some research, and a lot of it was done with our local dealer here in town. I've also spoken with a few different police chiefs regarding their e-bike ordinance, like Eugene doesn't have an e-bike ordinance. However, e-bikes are governed by ORS, which is what every other police agency pretty much enforces. But however, places like the city of Seaside, they restrict e-bikes through ordinance on where they can go. And that's based on problems they've had in the past, such as the promenade. If anybody's been to Seaside, around the turnaround, you can't ride e-bikes on the promenade or probably down Portland Ave or the main strip there. So the question then becomes, what do we want to do here, if anything, or recommend to council on e-bikes? There's 3 different classes of e-bikes, 1 and 2, and I outlined those in my monthly report. And then there's the third classification that goes faster, and they can be built up and made to go much faster than the 28 miles an hour. And talking with one of the businesses said that they've seen them go up to almost 70 miles an hour. So I'm not sure why you'd want to do an e-bike like that, but not my choice. So the question is, are there places in Gladstone where we have received complaints about e-bikes riding that we want to restrict? Or do we want to maintain what we currently have, which is just enforcing the law? Very difficult to identify a class 3 versus a class 2, be honest. It's difficult. However, there is a component down by the pedals that are extremely large. And unless you really know e-bikes, you're not going to be able to tell. So, but that's a question we all need to come up with. If there is, the police department has not received any complaints. I don't know what is going on in the community, but I wanted to push that out in my monthly report for those that do read it, to determine if there are complaints out there, they're just not reported. And so we can make that determination once we get more data, if we do get data.
I think some of the events the regular events we do, we can maybe solicit, or if there's a ban or something, just draw attention to it. Like the community festival or the bike festival or some of those other things.
Yeah, we can go to pros and cons of e-bikes, and solicit input when we're out there. I think that would be good.
And what would be the best way for someone to lodge a complaint or to let you all know about instances of e-bikes being a nuisance?
I think you can either do online or submit an email to the police department, to the city. It'll get transferred over to us.
Okay.
And we can look at those. Initially my thought is like Cross Park, where you have those paths that go down. That's really the only area I can think of right now that if there is a problem, we'd want to restrict up from there, but I'm not sure. Regular bicycles go down there.
Yeah, that's where I've encountered issues, is down there at Cross Park when you go jogging down there. And then, of course, across the bridge to the Oregon City side, they have a trail down by the river. I forget what it's called. But yeah, it's just the speed of them sometimes is surprising. It's like you're jogging and someone's coming up on the left. And so you turn to look behind you to make sure no cyclists are coming. But some of these e-bikes, they come through
They
so
just go
quick,
through.
and they cut around and stuff. So
Unlike other cyclists, they'll say, hey, on your left or on your right.
yeah, and I think, yeah, exactly. I think part of it is there's a culture among the cyclists and the pedestrians on those paths of, how you act on those paths and being courteous. And some of the e-bike users, they don't obey those social rules.
Right. And I guess how many e-bikes do you encounter down there? On the Gladstone side, there's nothing I can do for Oregon City.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's every time. It's not that long of a path really to go down. But I notice it. Oh gosh, where is that? It's kind of as you're going down first, and it curves to run into Arlington.
Yeah.
They'll kind of come down
By Charles Ames Park.
Yeah, there's the one way they'll kind of race down that and then cut across. I don't know how to describe it very well. That's kind of the area. That's kind of the area. Instead of going with the curve of the road, they'll cut straight across.
They're taking a
that
shortcut.
path. Yeah.
Okay.
Something I also, and maybe it's just because since you and I started talking about this, I'm now maybe a little more hyper aware of it. And I don't know what you call them, the uni-wheel things that people ride with helmets.
The single wheels.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say every night, but a good solid 3 or 4 nights out of the week, I'm walking the dogs at dusk, one of those things goes whipping by me. And I don't
Right.
hear it until it's,
Till it's too late.
yeah. So I don't know if those are worth reporting. I don't know if, I mean,
Where-
they don't
where-
have lights and
Where do they fit?
I don't want to sound like the old man.
Well, and the hard part is it's very difficult to govern every activity. So at some point, individuals riding those, I've seen them ride normal and I've seen them go pretty fast too, but they're typically on the street on the right-hand side. And so we just kind of leave them alone. And when they get in front of people, they obviously slow down, but that could be just because I'm sitting there. So it's hard to tell, and I'm not sure how to govern those.
Well, I'm wondering, kind of like Seaside does with their borders, if you have a north, south, east, west border around Gladstone proper, whatever that is,
Right.
where e-bikes and anything that isn't a vehicle or a bicycle has to maintain a 20 mile an hour, whatever it is, speed
Right.
limit.
Yeah, we may be able to come up with something like that. I mean, we can create an ordinance. It's, are we creating our own problem by creating an ordinance, or are we creating an ordinance in anticipation that we may have a problem? Does that make sense? And we've got to be able to justify that to the council.
In the ordinances, is there anything about lighting for any?
Just
any
like
area?
bicycles, bicycle lighting. So like e-bikes, they have to have lighting at night. It's all the same requirements. And a class 3 e-bike is considered a motor vehicle where class 2 and 1 are not. They're considered bicycles. So each one has their own rules throughout the ORS.
So is it worth, I guess I'm wondering, is it worth bringing up to city council to think about now or wait or have something more formal to present?
I'd almost want to have something more formal to present, because if they ask me right now, well, what is the issues in Gladstone with this? I'm not sure I have real good data or a real good answer for them.
Yeah, you can't say, well, there's been no complaints, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty
know?
certain that I want to spend time,
Yeah.
my time writing an ordinance and getting the city attorney involved in that. And I'm not sure I want to go to that even with my boss,
Have there been any injuries or accidents with these things?
not to my knowledge.
Okay, so jump out in front of a few and there you got your.
So, if it does come up, at council meetings, that's great. We can figure it out from there. We can have some discussion at council if it does come up, if they ask about. It's unfortunate that laws and rules get passed based on injuries at times. And we're not as proactive, but at the same time, it's hard to justify costs associated with creating something where there's no problem. Does that make sense? I'm actually going through my paperwork here because Christie gave me a sheet of data on traffic crashes, but on absolutely just numbers that I can't find now. But looking at traffic crashes currently, yes, thank you. Looking at traffic crashes currently from January 25 to March of 25, we have 17 traffic crashes. Of those 17, 42% were hit and runs. 58% were just crashes. We have time of day, and I think you all received this information. Time of day from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., they look like strong peaks, along with 12 to 2 high peaks, but those high peaks are 3, right? And then we go down to 1 to 0. So as you look at that, it's very tough to target certain areas. We all know the intersections that are difficult, right? So we've got 99 in Arlington. That's, I even hate driving through that intersection. I'm very, very cautious. Thanks, Chrissy, found it. Then we put some more traffic counts, and then also count a traffic type by vehicle damage. So minor and then major at the intersection. So grateful. Although we have 99 running through our city. Um, it, my opinion is these are low. We're not responding to traffic crashes every day, but we can always improve. What I really liked was the gentleman talking from the Clackamas County traffic safety is that, you know, we're looking at the gentleman that was in here that came in. He spoke at one of the city councils about curve signs, getting something because you go up a hill on Oakfield, if you're heading north, I call it north, I just call it east. But if you're heading north or east, it kind of rises and then turns as you're leaving the city. And we've had a couple cars over the last 3 years actually crash in there, and all based on speed. So I think one was a drunk driver. So we're looking at getting a curve sign in front of there, something that's reflectable. The problem is somebody had requested them before and the neighborhood didn't want it for whatever reason. He's speaking again. So I finally got his information back. So I'll be following up with him tomorrow on that very thing. And I'm going to ask him to do some help with his community up there and make sure that everybody's agreeable to putting those signs back up before we do it. So that's kind of in the works there. So that was nice to hear that, yes, you know, instead of changing the roadway, which engineering created that, City of Gladstone can't afford to just change that. So we're gonna work with signs on that. So gentleman came in and left because I was grateful to see him and get his information. So I promise him we'll be communicating that tomorrow. Give you some traffic stats for March. We made 253 traffic stops during the month of March, 945 to date. We issued 99 citations or charges, which takes us to 336. And we arrested 5 DUIs. That's 10. So understand that everything's ebb and flow, just depends. Sometimes we'll arrest 5 per month, and for a city like Gladstone, that's significant. We find mostly that those drivers are coming from outside of town bars, not necessarily in town bars. So we check on that. And the gentleman also brought up like Lake Oswego with their ODOT grants. We have the same grants. Just for different things, both for speed, distracted driving, DUI, and seatbelts. So we still produce those, and our officers are very active. You'll find that per capita, we're probably one of the highest in the county for traffic enforcement because it is a priority. So, and I think I've just given that for all the new people on the board that I haven't seen for a while. So it is an organizational priority. Traffic safety is. So questions on that?
I have one, same question I asked last year. As the weather gets nicer and the Lattice dealership gets busy, is there any increased awareness of either patrol presence around the dealership, or is there any?
Talking about the motorcycle?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we work closely with them. We've met with management and such. So, yeah, you'll always see a presence up there.
Okay.
And typically they come in off 205 or down 82nd Drive. So it's just one great big loop. So, but yes.
I just noticed that you hear the Harleys cruising through the neighborhoods a little more when the weather's nice.
Oh, yes, everybody's out, and we have a lot of Harley riders out here. So,
Yeah.
and what's interesting about them, I mean, Harleys are loud, but they're not necessarily speeding. So,
Question on the numbers. I know you just said that there was like an ebb and a flow there, but one thing that stood out to me was that both traffic contacts and citations issued doubled from this time last year. Is that intentional on your part? Are we doing more enforcement than this time last year, or where's that?
no, actually, I give my officers a lot of discretion whether to write or not to write
Okay.
a citation. Our priority is education first.
Mhm.
If we can get the point across of what your driving behavior was not good and the officer feels satisfied, because we also run them, so we see their driving record.
Right.
Right? If they feel satisfied that, okay, you've learned your lesson just based on the stop, they may not write. In some cases, we're always going to write. I mean, if you're suspended, you have a no ops, or if you're going whatever speed limit you're going, that's the officer doesn't agree with, they're going to write your citation.
Right.
So that's why we're under, or we're less than 50%
Mhm.
cite to stops, which is really good.
Right.
When you look at our, and sometimes we stop for like 7, 8 miles an hour over the speed limit. We get complaints from neighborhoods. No other agency I'm aware of will stop for that,
Mhm.
right? Usually it's about 9 to 10 before you're going to get stopped. But we'll lower that. We may not write tickets for it, but we'll make people aware.
But the traffic contact tax did similarly double from this
Mhm.
time last year. Is it increased staffing or
Well, yeah, so the more staff we get, the more effectiveness we're gonna get, plus these ODOT grants,
Hmm.
okay.
right? So we have people working overtime, so over same number of officers on shift, add 1 or 2 to that because they're working overtime because they want to, and they get requirements to make stops.
Yeah. I think that visibility is really good too. Like you said, it's not all about the tickets, it's about knowing that they're out there, right? I think that's
Yeah.
really important. And I think it's great to see.
Thank you, and I agree. The most effective traffic safety tool we have is having one driver stopped on Portland Avenue or somewhere else and seeing a bunch of other cars see it and go by.
Yeah.
You can see behavior change right away.
Yeah. We do that intentionally in work zones where we'll pay overtime hours for cops to sit
Yes.
at the end of the work zones, just flat, just with the lights on, not anyone pulled over, just say, we're here, and that's really important. That's really effective too.
Agreed.
99 in Dartmouth. That's kind of a tough corner. I know there's a big accident there the other day, but
Mhm.
has that ever been looked at as far as, because it's an uphill, right, left?
99 in Dartmouth. Well, it's kind of uphill, but not really. I mean, if you ask me, it's a pretty standard 4-way intersection with a traffic light there.
No,
Oh, I'm thinking about Gloucester, excuse me.
Dartmouth.
Dartmouth, no. I mean, it's tough coming on, especially if you're going west on Dartmouth, wanting to go south on 99, you're crossing 3 lanes of traffic to get out. That's tough.
Yes.
And some of it's got to be, you have to be able to recognize that at the same time. And you have to be able to, go down Dartmouth or another street that you can't get on 99 with a light and hit Gloucester, hit Arlington, or go down to Glen Echo if you're closer and use lights for safety to get across. Or sometimes people are just going to, and they'll wait and do it. So, but there are crashes there. Luckily, not too many.
Anything else?
Sorry, I got one last one.
No, that's fine.
I know in the past you talked about making a priority to issue more citations down by the river to change the behavior of some of the folks parking down there and using
Yeah.
that area. It says parking citations are down 34% over this time last year. Is that because behaviors have changed, or is it not as much of a priority, or is it?
Well, interesting.
Anything
So
to it?
when you go through that, we're coming through the winter months.
Mhm.
Really, nobody's down at High Rocks.
Yeah.
Right? And so that will definitely pick up.
Mhm.
It's going to be seasonal. And a lot of people are actually buying parking tickets over at Mildred Bar.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it's kind of is what it is type thing. And we're careful, especially in the neighborhoods, about issuing parking tickets to residents. I'd much rather knock on their door and say, hey, you can't do this, you can't park like this, and this is why. Please do this, rather than just drop a ticket on somebody and drive away. I don't believe in that type of service. So especially if
I
you're in
appreciate
the
that.
neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Unless you say you don't care, give it a ticket, and we're happy to do so.
All right. Thank you.
Bet.
All right, last chance. Anybody else got anything? Want to make a motion to close the meeting out, sir?
Make a motion to adjourn the traffic meeting of April 28th, 2025.
A second.
And you want me to read?
Yep,
Okay. So Tim,
yes.
yes. Daniel,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
and Benjamin,
Yes.
and Ken.
Yes.
All right, we're adjourned.